Tugboat owners soon learned that engine horsepower, effectively applied to propulsion, was a key factor in the profitability of a tugboat. One of the big steps in the evolution of tugboat design was the transformation from side wheel propulsion to the screw propeller. With a slimmer profile, lower center of gravity, and increased maneuverability at slow speeds, screw propellers were first used by harbor tugs for docking large ships. These tugs helped usher in a new age of steam-driven ocean liners into New York Harbor. In 1850, New York City's population was 650,000. 40 years later, it soared to 2,350,000, with over $1 billion in manufactured goods. This great growth in population and commerce was reflected on the harbor. In the late 19th century, the harbor was a fast-moving place. Sailing ships were giving way to steamships, with lines like Cunard, Anchor, and the French line making New York a scheduled stop. Tugboats were a vital aspect of the efficiency of the harbor, facilitating the swift arrival and departure of hundreds of ships every week. During these peak years, upwards of 800 tugs worked the harbor. By the 1870s, the Port of New York was handling 50% of the nation's exports and imports. By 1914, the flood of prosperity for tug owners had ebbed. With war in Europe imminent, shipping had all but ceased. The sinking of the Lusitania sent the message: the seas were not safe. When war finally broke out, New York became the largest port for munitions. Trainloads of deadly explosives poured into New Jersey, ready to be shipped out to the Allied nations. For the brave and enterprising tugboat captain, opportunities existed. Black Tom, a wharf in New Jersey, stored much of the munitions. German saboteurs were known to be working in the area, with several explosions having already taken place. On a July Saturday night in 1916, a guard at the Black Tom Pier reported flames coming from one of the rail cars. About 1 hour later, a series of massive explosions took place, lighting the sky for miles and sending a shockwave that could be heard in Philadelphia. Fred Bouchard, the youngest tugboat captain in New York Harbor at the time, witnessed the explosion.
Captain Fred was a tug captain for Gallagher Brothers, and he happened to be on watch that weekend, and the tug was tied up in the harbor, and the black time explosion occurred. The ammunition piers were blowing up. Him and his crew took the vessel over and started rescuing ammunition scows out of the black top pier. He got blown out of the wheelhouse several times. The wheelhouse had no electronics, and due to his heroic efforts, as well as his crew members, he was awarded salvage money from the federal government and New York State. And with that salvage money, he went in and bought his own scow and started up Bouchard Transportation.
Again, we see the can-do spirit of a single tugboat captain forming one of today's most successful transportation companies. Fred Bouchard's legacy drives the company today, an efficient model of the modern tugboat industry, capitalizing on the lessons of its ancestors. By its very nature, the job of working on a tugboat breeds independence. It takes a special kind of person to thrive in this environment. Hours of tedious helmsmanship may be punctuated by a series of quickly unfolding events that call for immediate action to avert a disaster. The skills to be an expert helmsperson are learned hands-on, passed down from generation to generation. The tugboat helmsperson not only has to know where they are now, how the tides, current, and wind are affecting them, but more importantly, how these variables will affect them a mile from now.
It's just knowing where to position the tug and barge in the current in order to get it to do what you want. The current can almost act like another assist boat for you. You know, if you ever stick your hand out the car window, you can tip your hand up and your hand goes up and your goes down. If you just think of it like that, so that vertically with the current, cock the boat one way or the other.
The techniques of utilizing the power of the current to help steer a tow have been shared by tug captains in New York Harbor since the industry began. If a tugboat captain from 1860 was brought on board a modern tugboat today, he would be familiar with how the boat was reacting to the current, but he would not be familiar with the power the tug has. A modern tug may have up to 7,000 horsepower, while the first steam engines only produced about 75 horsepower. With the development of the compound steam engine in the late 19th century, a tugboat's horsepower increased to around 600. But these engines required large amounts of fuel, several personnel dedicated to their operation, and frequent inspections. It may have been the steam engine giving birth to the tugboat, but it would be the diesel engine that would drive it into the future. Lighter in weight, greater efficiency, and reduced labor costs attracted tug owners to this new form of propulsion. The transformation to diesel was gradual, with many companies opting to operate steam tugs until they were no longer serviceable. The companies that did make the transformation early saw increased profit margins, allowing many of them to buy out their competitors and seize new markets. Though no longer with us, the legacy of the magnificent steam tug remains. Their iconic smokestacks, whistles, and rhythmatic sounds helped define New York Harbor. Constantly on the water, they bore witness to all events in the harbor. Some steam tugs even became famous for heroic action.